here, isn't he?
Yeah. Commissioner Jennings? He's here.
Here.
Oh, Jennings, not Merker.
Okay.
That's it. So everybody's here. Do I hear a motion to approve the agenda?
Motion to approve the agenda?
We get a second from somebody online?
Seconded.
All right. Any discussion? Any corrections, additions, deletions? Call the roll on the agenda.
Commissioner Ford?
Yes.
Commissioner Smith?
Yes.
Commissioner Jennings?
Yes.
All right. Need a motion to approve the minutes of May 5th.
Motion to approve the minutes?
Second
I'll
online.
second.
Any discussion? Corrections, additions, deletions?
I did, Mr. Chairman, just about 3 minutes. I wanted to give a brief report about something.
Okay, we'll get there pretty quick. We'll do that next. And then nothing. Take the roll.
Commissioner Jennings?
Yes.
Commissioner Ford?
Yes.
Commissioner Smith?
Yes. All right, the next on the agenda is Historic Preservation Commission activities, and since we don't have any of those, we're gonna let the city manager go forward in its place.
Yeah, this won't take that long, but I talked to Greg a couple times and thought this was a good time to do this. We had a really good meeting today with Erin's on there, so I can, she does a great job, but we had a good meeting, Dan and I, talking about some things that we feel like need to be changed, improved. One of the things is internal regular staff meetings with Erin, the clerk's office, and myself on a monthly basis, if not more. So we'll be doing those just to stay up to date on some things, how we can help the Planning Commission. The other is we discuss memos, reports that are being submitted to the commission. We need a consistent, and this is no criticism, so Erin knows I'm not being critical, but we all agree we need a consistent format and structure. You see that we did that with budget with our council. So time and time again, where it's at, where the recommendations are, and the public sees it and understands it. So we're talking about fact-based decisions. I believe, and in the past, have our planners brought the full recommendations. They also, and this happened with the Kiewit project. At the end, we saw transportation and some other things that it kind of was contingent upon. We should have had that up front. It's not their fault. It's not anybody's fault. But the planner can look at those and go, aha, we may have a need for a transportation plan. A driveway's got, so does DOT agree? Do they, because all these things are contingent. But those would be included in the report. And in a lot of cases, like Kiewit probably would have said right up front, absolutely, we'll get that done. We'll submit when we get it. So we had that discussion. Also, more involvement with our planner, working with the developers and the businesses, where we can do regular meetings with the developers, because I will tell you, planners, if you do this stuff in advance, can get a lot of the stuff done before it even comes to the commission. You just have to look at it and approve or disapprove or take action. So I think that definitely will help. My thing is no surprises. We should not walk in here and you're surprised. If that's the case, on our side, we're doing something wrong. It's called lack of communication. So that definitely has to be improved. I know we've not had that, but we want to avoid it as we're getting busier in the future of the city. Communication is the key. The other is, was just an example. When you have motions and actions actually on the document itself, what I'm used to is my planners would put in 3 or 4 actions with what the motion should be. It may be take no action. It may be table to the next meeting based on this. It may be yes, and then if there are changes, the motion's right there, and the other's disapproval. And based on what? It's consistent. And that way you guys have better stuff. And it has to be in your hands sooner to give you time to do and to call the staff and say, what does this mean? What is it? And when someone, the chair, any of us call the planner, then we send that answer to everyone. Nobody walks in with all the information. Everyone has all the information. So that, and we, by doing this effectively, we can, realtors and developers, your job is to develop the economy. I mean, you're building homes and tax base, all of those things. Well, knowing some of that stuff right up front, for us, we reduce wait times for the businesses and residents, so they don't have to wait so long. They have a menu of here's what I'm supposed to do. Now, if they don't do them, we need to enforce. And I do believe we don't enforce enough in some things. We're now starting that with inspections. People are being very cooperative, and we understand it's changed. But we're following code, and we're following the building standards, the National Building Code. As you know, we've had that conversation. The other is developing a standard operating procedure based on code to ensure proper steps on a consistent basis. I think, I know this way the commission understanding the legal processes, basically we do a flow chart and say, if it's a variance, you do this, if it's this, then, so you see the process, and we develop SOPs for a variance, for conditional use. It's very methodical, but everybody has a clear understanding right up front. The other is regular reports from the inspections office as to permits, trends, things that the inspector is seeing, because that's boots on the ground. So we will be doing that. We'll give you something and then see what you think of it. So we'll get your report and go, okay, we'd like to have X, and we'll work that out, because again, that's stuff you can work with. The other is I have been approved to hire an assistant city manager. And my goal now, well, what I need or have to do is someone with a planning background. I'd like to get someone with 5 to 8 years experience with planning processes. They would oversee the building inspector. They would work with the building inspector and the planning commission as staff and work with Aaron. So then we have a very clear step, and we have the people that can answer calls. So if someone comes in, they can come sit down with the assistant manager and go over projects. The other is comprehensive plan. That's our next biggest. I'll be going out for an RFP in August. And the comprehensive plan now in most of your state and federal grants is required. If you don't have it, no money. It in the last 5 years is a definite no-go. So we have got to get that done. So I've asked Aaron to help me with some folks that I can send out the RFP across the state. And if we need to go outside the state, I would like to stay within the state of Alaska. We'll just see how that goes. But supervising building inspections, coordinating planning projects like the comprehensive plan, that's the point person. The other is a land use plan. The land use plan, it's kind of, you understand, it's kind of a funny thing. It really is part of the comprehensive plan, but it's a subgroup. That will drive, in my experience, your zoning plan, all of those things. So that's important. We're also going to be doing, may not sound like something for the planning commission, but the LEPC, we're going to be doing an emergency operation plan. Ours is way out of date. We have now with the military, if you notice, we've had tabletops. The military here, at least once every 2 weeks, somebody's here. we've gotten the eye of being the Arctic port. We've gotten our federal folks online. So I'm excited about that. But I just worked with the FAA, working with the airport, looking at the operations plan. Because when something happens here, a chemical spill, whatever, we're on our own for 3 days. We're on our own. So what are our capabilities? What are those things? But that causes the need for planning. Also, this person will also be the person to vet projects, zoning requests, and variances, and work there and then making recommendations. Again, we're going to be late August, early September on the comprehensive plan, land use, another required document, particularly for developers. They like to see that, and the zoning, in which we're going to improve all those or rewrite. And with the land use plan, zoning efforts as the city grows to avoid conflicts of development and uses. In other words, all of a sudden I have this big residential development, we see it, and then boom, I plunk down a manufacturing facility next to homes. Is that a smart move? No. Well, you plan for it, and we can absolutely do that. I do want to thank, beginning this fall, with working with the planning, the LEPC, and local emergency, that's the Local Emergency Planning Commission. The state of Alaska, COERIC, has been awesome. Not that anyone, but they have been awesome. They have Kevin, who is there. He is awesome, and he is the emergency manager over the tribal units on the Seward Peninsula. Well, that's where we're using the regional concept. Even our text.mygov that we're sending out alerts, he's doing the same thing. We connect, goes to the whole Seward Peninsula. So we stay on top of things. And we'll be in fire, search and rescue, ports, airport. We'll all be involved in that. And better than that, we were able to go find the money, and we had the funding for all of these projects. We were able to get FEMA that had a little extra money, and I stuck my hand in their pocket and their wallet, took it, and we got the money. So I'm excited about that, and taxpayers don't have to pick up the cost. So those are just some ideas and thoughts. What I will begin doing is working with Aaron and Dan to put together some of the SOPs, bring them to you, and you guys walk through them and make recommendations, deletions, all those things. So anyway, I just wanted to do that tonight. I'll be glad to come back at the next meeting and talk to some folks. But this, I think, is important because we hear about things that you guys may not, about projects, and we need to sit down and talk about these things on a regular basis. So I appreciate you giving me 5 minutes and 2 seconds. Any questions for me?
No.
Okay.
Thank you so
All
much.
right.
Thank you, Lynn.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Nobody? Moving on. Pretty exciting stuff. Citizens comments? Anybody in the citizens? No. Not yet. Unfinished business? We don't have any. We have some new business, which is training, and we have Aaron on the line that can introduce us to that. But we do have staff reports, which nobody's here for that. So we're going to, except for what Lee just gave us, which was awesome. I guess go to training.
All right. Well, today is our final installment of the training that we've been going through, provided by the American Planning Association. So tonight's session is focused in on legal decision making, which is frankly a really good complement to what we were talking about with our attorneys for a couple months ago with the training that they were involved with. And what is on the screen now is also a good takeaway for you guys. It's your parting gift. It's just the 5 top takeaways from the video that we'll have tonight. And so tonight is just one video, 30 minutes long. So I guess it looks like we've got that ready. So That's all I've got.
May I ask you a question? Are we gonna have this, aired somewhere, this is Lee, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
to have this where the other members who are not here can pull this up and a link or something? Can we do that?
Yes. Yeah. So if you look on the agenda, there is a there's a link there that folks will, can log on to. Yeah. And I say log on, but really all you have to do is click. So, yep.
Thank you. Aaron, did it start?
No
It
sound.
starts, the sound starts.
In a bit.
Oh,
Oh,
this is the read along section.
Well, thank you. I'm Michael Blue, and we're here with Greg Jones of the law firm of Ansel Blank, and we're going to talk about the legal aspects of decision-making related to the planning commissioner. So, Greg, thanks for joining us. Thanks for having me, Michael. So let's start with just that. What are the legal implications of a planning commission recommendation? How cautious do they have to be? Do they need to pay attention to any legal precedent, or start off with that?
Sure. Well, at its heart, a planning commission is supposed to conduct a thorough public vetting of a development proposal or anything that comes before it, and make a recommendation to the city council or the village board, which I believe is so the recommendation matters, and the conduct of the hearing matters because, in theory, the facts and testimony provided at the hearing will provide the basis for the planning commission's recommendation. Planning commission needs to allow as many people or interested parties to speak at the public hearing as possible, because you want to make sure you have a well-rounded, full body of evidence to make a recommendation on. And village boards and city council tend to pay attention to planning commissioners. The mayor appoints the planning commissioner, and they're typically confirmed by the city council, so they place trust in them. There's an expectation that they will go ahead and do their job thoroughly and diligently. So the recommendation absolutely matters.
Okay. So, but for the commission, they don't have to worry too much about the city getting sued, if they're doing their job, if they're going through the process correctly, and ultimately there's an elected body behind them that's making the final decision.
That's right. The commission needs to stay focused on the standards for approval for the request in front of it. So what does that mean? That's there's a variance request. The zoning code will have specific standards that the planning commission should consider when determining whether to support or recommend denial of a variance. There's different standards for special use. Planned unit developments typically have much longer standards because it's a more involved process. So as long as the planning commission views the testimony that's provided at the hearing through the lens of those standards to determine whether or not the applicant is meeting those standards, the city is pretty well protected from the laws.
Well, one of the questions we get a lot from commissions and commissioners in the work we do is they're always worried about setting a precedent. So if we allow this variation or approve that special use, haven't we set a precedent that allows the next one to come through that maybe we don't like, we can't say no to it? Tell us a little bit about precedent.
There's a lot of misconception around the concept of setting a precedent. The short answer is if you approve a fence variance for Joe Jackson, you're not required to go ahead and approve the next fence variance that comes in for Sally Smith. Each request should be evaluated on its own merits, its own facts, and its own circumstances. So we'll take Joe Jackson's fence variance request. Say he comes in and asks to build an 8-foot fence in a zoning district where only 6-foot fences are allowed. Maybe that 8-foot fence is warranted because there's a drive-through on the property next door, or there's an alley next door, or there's a dog kennel. Now, when Sally Smith comes in, her house backs up to another residential property. So there's differences, factual differences between the two cases. So the way that a planning commission can really protect itself from arguments of, well, you approve Joe's variance, you have to approve Sally's variance, is to focus and drill down on the facts. focus on the facts and testimony presented at the hearing, it should become apparent that there are differences between the two. Now, that's the legal answer. It's difficult to set a precedent by approving, one variant. There's also the public perception or political angle as well. Now, the public is not necessarily going to understand the nuance between the two variant requests. And this also reemphasizes the importance of making sure you clearly state on the record why you're supporting the variance, what those facts are. That way, when someone comes in later, you can say, yes, but you're not located next to a kennel or a drive-through or an alley as a lot draft.
Okay, that's great. We talk a lot about findings of fact as part of the deliberation. First of all, what are they? And second of all, why are they important?
Findings of fact are, it's an analysis of the testimony and facts presented at the hearing. So it's all the reasons why, or in some cases, why not, a proposal meets the zoning standards in the ordinance. It's important to note that the findings of fact need to be based only on the testimony provided at the hearing or the meeting. You're not supposed to take into account any outside factors that haven't been presented on the record. So they're important because it shows that the Planning Commission is doing its job and it's considering the appropriate legal factors when it makes its recommendation. So the Planning Commissioners, again, it's going to be a common theme that runs throughout our talk. They need to be familiar with the standards and they need to view all testimony that's provided at the hearing through those standards. And it's pretty common for commissioners to actually have the standards written down on the dais next to them. And that's part of having a quality staff report as well.
And in terms of those findings of fact, they ultimately become part of the record. They ultimately find their way to the elected body that's making the decision. Who writes them? Staff, secretary, chair of the commission, somebody randomly selected from the commission?
It varies, and a lot of it depends on the capacity of the municipality, both in terms of how much staff support they have and things of that nature. So there's three common approaches. First, it's a really good idea to have the applicant submit draft findings of fact with his application. The applicant, at the end of the day, is the one asking for approval, asking for relief. Have him make his case in writing. And that serves a couple of purposes. First, it'll provide the commission with a general idea of what findings of fact may be if they wanted to support the case. And two, it'll help get the applicant in the right mindset before the hearing, because it's basically his presentation or his argument written down, which is good. It'll make for a more fruitful hearing. It'll get him focused on those standards as well. Alternately, the commission can draft its own findings. That can happen during the meeting. Certainly work with clients that have worksheets, basically, that have here's standard number one, and there's 5 or 6 lines below it. And the commission, after the public hearing is closed, still during an open meeting, will discuss what facts and what testimony presented at the hearing satisfy that factor, and they'll walk through all of them. That's a little bit more labor intensive. It can make the meeting a bit longer, but on the other hand, it also helps show the public how the sausage is made, so to speak. It's very transparent. It's very apparent what the commission is doing. There's no activity behind closed doors. Or alternately, if it's a community with more resources, you can have staff prepare findings, either draft findings prior to the hearing or findings based on the testimony after the hearing. So there's no one right way to do it. If you have staff, they're typically the professionals, the experts. It's great to rely on them. We certainly recognize that not every community has a professional planner on staff.
But those findings written around those standards, those are really kind of the heart of the evaluation of the testimony process, aren't they?
They absolutely are. And they'll be forwarded on to the city council for their consideration prior to the vote. Certainly, if you end up in court, findings made by the Planning Commission are a consideration. So it's important, and you should take time with it.
So you mentioned, we talked about that there are standards that these findings of fact address, and that sometimes there's more of them. They're generally similar, they're not the same in every community. But sometimes you can say there's a lot of them for planned unit development. There might be more of them. Does the application have to meet all of these standards, or just most of them?
The application needs to meet the standards. It's not 1 out of 3 or 2 out of 3. It's not more than not. It's clear that the application needs to address each standard. So that's part of the burden that applicants carry, and that's why they need to be carefully consider the application they're bringing forth and whether or not they can state a claim, substantiate support for that proposal.
Are some of those standards written where there's some room for interpretation? I mean, those standards are not, is the building 6 feet tall? The standards talk about there's adequate facilities or there's adequate capacity, and there may be something about impact or trend of development. Those might be kind of fuzzy things. Is that true? And what if you can make a case the other way?
Yeah, there's absolutely room for argument. That's why we have attorneys. They're not yes or no answers in many questions. In many cases, it's a lot of analysis based on the facts and circumstances related to the property, which is what this is supposed to be about. It's a hearing about what's going on the property.
So with that in mind, what should a commissioner keep in mind to be sure that as they're either asking questions or making their comments or deliberating amongst themselves, what should the commissioners keep in mind so that they're making a good case, that they're helping form those findings of fact to all those standards?
Well, first, and this is probably one of the more difficult things for commissioners to do, is you need to be able to discern between relevant testimony and facts and what we'll call all the other noise. Some of it's obvious. Personal attacks obviously have no place in a public hearing. But there are a lot of other things that fall into a gray area where the commission, especially if it's not a particularly experienced one, may place a false emphasis on it. So an example of this, I participated in a hearing where there was a drugstore that wanted to move into a neighborhood. It was adjacent to a park, and it was predominantly a single family residential area around there. There was a member of the public who stood up and testified, and she had, through the Freedom of Information Act, obtained copies of police reports for a drugstore located in a different community, not even the same drugstore. And she proceeded to read pages and pages, and this was years of police reports talking about how children were going to be kidnapped out of the parking lot of this drugstore, and how rapists and pedophiles tended to frequent pharmacy parking lots. That's not relevant. That's totally irrelevant. And it's important for the Planning Commission to recognize that. And that also emphasizes the importance of having a chair that has a pretty strong handle on meeting conduct. Because in that case, she was gabbled quiet and said, listen, if you have testimony that relates to the factors that the Planning Commission is required to consider, please provide that, but recognize that what you're talking about right now is not necessarily relevant. So the best advice really is to be familiar with those standards and view the testimony through the lens of those.
You mentioned gabbling a resident who's making a comment. And in terms of taking testimony and how much testimony and cutting off testimony, is there a legal answer to the question of how much testimony is enough, how much is too much, when can you cut people off, should you cut people off?
Generally err on the side of providing more testimony. It's painful. It can make for some long nights. You're going to see your family less, but that's your job. The city council has the ability to curtail public comment largely out of necessity. They're governing the entire municipality. The Planning Commission's purpose is different. They're there to take testimony. They're there to listen to a wide range of claims, some more relevant than others, some clearly irrelevant. They don't have to listen to those. But if there's a degree of relevancy in what is being presented, the Planning Commission is obligated to listen, and that serves the purpose of making sure they're doing a thorough job evaluating each proposal and giving it the time that it deserves. And it also protects the community, city, from lawsuits in the future that someone's due process rights were cut off. Folks have a right to be heard, public notice requirements. That's why we have open meetings, and that's kind of the bedrock principle of democratic government.
Okay, that's great. So that's just part of the process.
Yes.
In terms of the operations of a commission or a planning commission, I know a lot of them have got their own bylaws, their own set of rules and procedures. Is that a requirement? Do they have to have those? And if they don't, is it a good idea to have them?
It's a good idea to have them, and laws can vary, do vary, I should say, from state to state. The bylaws are important because it's really the playbook for how the Planning Commission is supposed to function. So it talks about membership, it talks about obligation to attend meetings, it talks about conduct of meetings, a variant of Robert's Rules of Order is commonly used by a lot of planning commissions, but you don't have to use Robert's Rules of Order wholesale. You can make changes. It's really a good idea because Robert's Rules of Order is really intended to govern deliberative bodies that are in constant session. And planning commissions aren't. They hold a meeting once or twice a month and they're done. So the bylaws establish the ground rules. They can establish limits within reason on public comment as well. So if the situation comes up where the planning commission needs to limit public comment, and there are bylaws that have been adopted by the community, that's a stronger legal position if you ever need to defend it.
Sounds to me like a lot of these rules, a lot of the structure really is ultimately to the benefit of the commission. So that if you have a bylaw rule that says, you know, we're going to try and end the meeting by 11 o'clock, or we're not going to start a new case after a certain time, and that you've got to stick with these findings of fact and consider those, that this structure can really be very helpful to the staff and the commission in managing what can be an emotional situation.
That's exactly right. It's the rules of the road, and it establishes expectations. And to your comment about ending meetings at a certain time, we've all been in situations where we've sat through the small hours of the morning listening to deliberations from commissioners who have been on the dais for 5, 6, 7, 8 hours, and it's hard to make good decisions. I've been sitting up there. It's 2 o'clock in the morning.
From a legal perspective, you might not make the best decision.
I would agree with that.
So the motion, the way motions are made, a lot of times you see commissioners get a little bit hung up in how they do this. One of the key understandings, though, is that motions are always supposed to be made in the affirmative. Is that right? And tell us why.
Yeah, that's correct. And an example will help highlight why or how this can go wrong, because it can go very wrong. So imagine you've got a controversial land use proposal. Say it's a glue factory. It's loud, it's noisy, it smells, and they want to locate next to a park in the middle of a residential neighborhood. So, basically the least consistent land use you can imagine, with children playing in the property next door in the backyard. And at some point during the hearing, it becomes very apparent that everyone in the audience is opposed to this other than the applicant. And one of the commissioners is just fed up, and he, in a moment of passion says, you know what, I'm going to make a motion that we deny this proposal. So, and the motion seconded. So the motion on the floor is now a motion to deny. So it's in the negative. So the roll is called and everyone starts voting. Those voting yes on that motion are voting to kill the proposal. Those voting no on that motion are voting to support it. Now, take a step back. Think about a referendum question, or anytime you step into the ballot box. Michael, do you support a tax increase to pay for constructing a new village hall? Your yes vote means yes. In the circumstance of this planning commission that just stated a negative motion, your yes vote would mean no. So that's confusing. And it also confuses the folks in the audience who are sitting there watching an entire dais of people vote yes to kill a project. And this goes on. It's not just an immediate concern, because the meeting minutes, from a legal perspective, when something goes wrong and there's a lawsuit later, the minutes are very important. It's frequently the only copy of the record of what happened at the hearing. And the minutes can be very confusing when it says motion to deny, and it says who voted yes. You've got yeses, you got no's. We've seen circumstances too where you've had a negative motion stated, and commissioners realized after the fact, either at that meeting or a subsequent meeting, say, hey, I meant to vote the other way. So then you've got another procedural hurdle, and it not only confuses the planning commission, it makes the community look bad and disorganized in certain respects. You want to come across as looking professional. So all of this is easily dispatched by just stating motions in the positive. So even if you hate the glue factory, you make a motion to approve the glue factory and let everybody vote no.
All set. Okay. That glue factory, now let's take something that could get approved, may have some conditions placed on it as part of the approval. And what we see is that sometimes conditions are things that get talked about. So one of the commissioners might say, we need better landscaping over there. But that's not part of the motion. It's not part of the approval. It might be in the minutes. But ultimately that notion of, hey, we need more landscaping, that's not really binding. It's only binding if it's done how.
If you want it to be binding, it needs to be in the motion.
Okay.
And it will only be binding if the village board adopts an ordinance that expressly includes that condition. So if you feel strongly as a commissioner about a specific item, whether it's landscaping or color of the building, signage, what have you. Your motion to approve the development should state, I make a motion to approve the development subject to Bob the builder painting his building purple. Otherwise, it's not legally enforceable. Otherwise, the public who attended the meeting and heard the commissioner speak about the purple building will likely think that the building's supposed to be purple and will probably end up calling Village Hall when it ends up being painted yellow.
I think a lot of planners have been in a situation where a meeting had to be changed or rescheduled or a case removed because public notice was not properly made. So there are these legal terms that we hear a lot. We hear about public notice and open meetings, and they seem to just be very controlling in what goes on. Can you explain those concepts a little and why it really is important to pay attention to those?
Sure. This is the public process is quite possibly the most important component of the entire zoning review. Government's credibility is largely reliant on how responsive and accountable it is to the public. And the zoning process in Illinois and elsewhere requires open public hearings to be conducted for zoning proposals. This provides the public an opportunity to come out and express either their support or dissatisfaction with the proposal, and it allows a full record. Without a public process, you get a lot of palace intrigue, frankly. Like there was a meeting behind closed doors, smoke-filled or not, and these decisions were made, and I didn't have an opportunity to speak, and that really contradicts what the basic principles of responsible government are. So in order to build credibility in government, in order to lend credibility to the decision that will ultimately be made by the council, you need to have a big tent process where everyone's invited in and folks can come out and share their views on it.
So I want to turn a little bit to the legal elements of being a commissioner, things that the commissioners have to know. What kind of ethics rules are there that are binding on commissioners?
The ethics rules, that's a good question. And the ethics rules vary from state to state, but there's some certain common elements that run throughout them. For example, Illinois has what's commonly known as the Gift Ban Act. And it, as the name implies, prohibits commissioners from accepting gifts from prohibited sources. Now, I'm not going to sit here and lecture you on the specifics of the law and all of the elements because we don't have time and you don't have patience. But a lot of this is common sense. So an example, if you're a commissioner and someone who is before the commission, whether it's a developer or your neighbor who wants to get a variance to reduce the side yard setback, offers to buy you a new car or something expensive or anything really significant, and that seems out of the ordinary, should probably think about it. So there's a couple important things to know here. Acknowledge that there are laws that govern conduct for planning commissioners. The typical planning commissioner is not going to spend time digging through statute books to understand what each of those laws are, but just know they're out there and exercise some common sense. B, as a commissioner, you're not an island unto yourself. You have a support network. Typically, there's staff. Typically, there's an attorney. If you find yourself in a situation where you don't feel comfortable or something doesn't smell right, talk to staff, talk to the attorney, and they'll provide you with counsel through it. It can be a little bit awkward in the moment when somebody offers you something and you say, hey, you know what, I really appreciate it, but I don't know if it's appropriate. I'm going to talk with staff. Let me get back to you. That's typically all it takes. And it can keep you out of trouble, and it can keep the community out of trouble too, because what you really want to avoid is the specter of impropriety, because that can paint both the proceedings that are before the planning commission, whether it's a specific development proposal, and it can also implicate just the credibility of government in general. There's a lot of folks out there who think that government's on the take, and that's not the case in the vast majority of circumstances. But proceeding cautiously, understanding that there are laws that implicate your conduct, and realizing that you have resources that you can rely on will get you a long way.
Kind of related to that is the notion of a conflict of interest. So a lot of times you hear commissioners talk about, well, they have a conflict, or do they have a conflict? And sometimes they recuse themselves from a matter. So can you tell us what constitutes a conflict of interest and when somebody should recuse themselves?
Sure. The term conflict of interest gets bandied about about, particularly in the public, more than it should. But there are situations where there are legitimate conflicts of interest, and commissioners should be aware of those situations. First, and an example will probably be most helpful here because the conflict statutes do vary from state to state. But take, for example, a planning commissioner who owns a property that's located next to a car dealer, luxury car dealer, big, beautiful cars. And the car dealer approaches the planning commissioner and says, hey, we're thinking about expanding our dealership. We're going to sell you more cars. This is great for the town, increased tax revenue. Everybody's going to be happy. We think you're going to love our beautiful dealership. There's glass windows, everything else. The commissioner says, yeah, that sounds great. So they enter into a purchase and sale agreement that's contingent on getting zoning approval. The developer then comes before the planning commission and asks for his rezoning in order to build his new dealership. Planning commissioner sitting up on the dais. Does he have a conflict? It's a pretty obvious example. That absolutely is a conflict of interest. He has a contractual interest in the property that is part of the development proposal. So it's not okay for him to cast a vote on that. That undermines his ability to think in the public interest and keep the public interest and those zoning factors in mind. Because no matter how hard he tries, he's going to have that dollar value stuck in the back of his head that he wants to get for selling the property. That's a clear conflict of interest. Those situations, if they do come up, 9 times out of 10, probably more than 9 times out of 10, that commissioner is going to recuse himself. Those are pretty obvious. There are other situations which fall into more of a gray area. So same example, but say there's no zoning contingency involved in the contract. Say the luxury dealer just buys the property outright and then comes back for approval a year or 18 months later. And that proposal comes before the planning commission, and that commissioner who 18 months ago sold the property to the car dealer sitting up there. There's an open question as to whether or not it's okay for him to vote on it. In a lot of states, it's okay. There's not a contractual interest. So there's not a clear conflict of interest. That's the legal answer, the legal analysis based on the statute. But as a commissioner, you also have to keep in mind the optics and the appearance of impropriety. How would it look if a resident or the paper found out that that commissioner sold the property and then during the meeting was a vocal advocate for the development and it ultimately went through and got approved? So there's a public perception component of it too. And just because there's not a legal conflict of interest, it's a good idea for commissioners to keep the public perception in mind. And if you think there's an issue, you can always recuse yourself. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that.
What about, there are times where people might think there's a conflict of interest, but there really isn't. So if the church you're part of is coming for a special use before you, or your country club comes before the commission, or if there's a rezoning for an entire zoning district in the downtown and you happen to own a property in the downtown, you're connected to it, but are those necessarily a conflict of interest?
Not necessarily. You really have to take a closer look. And this is where the public and sometimes, the media that's reporting on it can get it wrong. And it was sensationalized headlines of, commissioner on the take, he's voting for his own self-interest. You really need to look at the specific facts and circumstances. Like an example that comes up frequently, say, Apple. Everybody loves Apple. An Apple store is coming to town. And Michael, you're a commissioner and you own Apple stock. And you know what? You voted to support that Apple store. To say that's not necessarily a conflict. Now, if you own 10% of Apple stock, that probably would be a conflict because that's, I'm sorry to hear that. That would be pretty close to a controlling interest. But most people don't own 10% of Apple's stock. They own some shares and they have it, set aside for retirement or what have you. So the facts are important and the analysis is important. And, it never hurts to, in these situations, to state on the record, listen, I'm a parishioner of this church, but I'm not involved in the business management or affairs of this church, and I feel comfortable voting on it. And you might catch some flack from some people in the public, but a lot of them are going to appreciate that you've been upfront, that you've explained your relationship, and explained that there's no more palace intrigue going on here.
And I'll go back to the advice you gave with the last question we had about ethics, is if there's a question about a conflict of interest, contact your staff, contact your corporation counsel.
Always. And that's another really good point. I know a lot of communities don't have corporation counsel at the meetings, but they certainly can help. And this is one of the situations they can. There are legal issues that will come up that will inevitably be outside of the chairman or the commission's comfort zone. And having legal counsel there can really help you navigate those waters in the most sensitive of situation, be it it's televised or in front of a bunch of your neighbors and friends.
So one more thing about the commissioners that's got to be important because I think it's Latin. This idea of ex parte communication or talking to people outside of the meeting. Why is that an issue and what should be avoided there?
The whole purpose of the planning commission and the public meeting process is to have these deliberations in the public. There's nothing to hide here. Everything is upfront. The decision, the recommendation that the planning commission makes is based only on testimony and evidence presented at the hearing. So there's no hide the ball. Everything that you need to see is in front of you. Ex parte communications are when an applicant or an interested party lobbies the planning commissioner or city councilman behind the scenes. So they invite you out for dinner. They show up at your door and say, "Hey, I bought you a cup of coffee. Let's sit down and talk." Now, this is going to happen. You're a public official. A lot of these meetings are televised on TV in some communities. People are going to understand that you're serving your community, and that's a great thing. But as a result of them being aware of your service, they're going to go to you if they think there's an issue that you can help with. You're not going to go run and hide in the bushes. If you see Joe, your neighbor, coming down the street, you don't run across the street to avoid him. It's not realistic. But the best advice is you want to keep all of these discussions in the public. So if someone comes up to you and says, "Hey, I really want to talk to you about the development proposal," say, "Thanks, I really appreciate it. But, as a planning commissioner, we're supposed to hold these hearings. Please come to the hearing. We'd love to hear what you have to say. That's the best way to make a difference, and your input really matters."
You can't make it, send a letter perhaps or an email.
Yeah, absolutely. And staff bring up another good point with staff. Come to the meeting, or you can also direct folks to staff. Say, "Hey, if you have input about the proposal, staff's really managing this. They're doing the whole, the public input prior to the meeting. So, call, Sally the planner, or send an email to this email address and give them your thoughts." Those thoughts will be shared with the commission. Those thoughts will be shared with the city council. Your voice will be heard. It just provides structure around the communication process, and it also provides a barrier protecting the commission from allegations that there's something nefarious going on.
Goes back to what you said before about the optics. It doesn't look like there's something going on. Everything's out front.
Yeah, exactly. And one last thought on this too. If you do happen to have a conversation with someone, and it's a friend, and these conversations can happen. You start on one topic and you shift to another, and he brings up a relevant point about a development proposal that's before the commission. Disclose it during the public hearing. Say, "Hey, you know what? On Sunday, I had Joe over. We were watching the Bears game, and he brought up a point on this that I think is relevant, and I want to share it with them." It tells them that the conversation happened. It puts it on record. It shows that there's nothing to hide. So there are options to deal with it other than finding a bush to jump into.
And I think that's great advice because I think a lot of times commissioners are uncomfortable with this idea of disclosure, letting people know what happened. But as we used to warn people, you don't want Joe to come and stand at the podium and go, "Hey, when I was talking to Commissioner Greg about this the other day, he thought it was a fine idea." So it's another one of these ways that the structure of the system really helps the commissioner, protects the commissioners, they do their job.
That's exactly right. It's being called out at a public hearing for a private conversation is definitely a red face moment.
Absolutely. All right, well, Greg, thank you for sharing your insights on the legal aspects of the commission function. And we thank you for your time.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you, Michael.
We made it. And fall asleep.
Actually, it's very good.
It's pretty good. They even use my name,
They know you.
and not in vain. Where we at on the agenda? Can you put the agenda back up there? Any final comments? Anything from Aaron?
I have nothing further to add. I do think, and as I keep talking, I do again think that was a really good compliment to conversations that we've been having over the last couple of months, and I hope you found that to be helpful.
Yes. Very. Thank you. So no staff here for staff reports other than the one we already got, but we have a staff report up on the screen. So let's go for it. So right now we have good stuff. So this BSR, go to the top, I guess. Go ahead. I'm still there. Look at that.
Finish that, finish that up.
I
You and me
hope.
both, honey, you and me both.
I know, I got too many irons in the fires.
I'm just slowly scrolling down, looking at
Anything new? Like, I like the, Eskimo houses, they getting people in them yet, or we have any idea? Not really. These are all open, huh?
Well, one of the things that's being done is doing an audit of these. So slowly but surely, I know when Jonathan started, there were over 100.
These, yeah, these look
So-
pretty good.
Yeah, so we're in the process of closing things out.
Benjamin Fraley, he's here.
this one is new.
Yeah, Wally and Dan, what's going on there?
Rebuilding the deck
On where?
and at his house.
You're doing it?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, Broly is 1006, up a little bit. That one, doesn't
Benjamin
belong to
Fraley?
them anymore.
Yeah, I know. That's why I picked it out. You got that right. You got the names like I do. Dan, Andrew Harrison, where is that? Spinning Rock Road. Okay.
By Robin's house.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Interesting. What the heck's Robin doing? Something.
Mhm. Getting ready to build, new construction.
On the same block?
It's outfit out of Canada, actually. Kid out,
Where at the end of the road area?
right by,
Down that whole area, pretty much. Walter.
yeah, there's a few new ones up there, so that's bodes well, that's, so there's some growth. I see a lot of new ones that we didn't see.
There's one I could probably close. So
Get your COE, huh?
I already have it. That's just for text. That that nice thing I put on there. I don't have to shovel save its money right first winter. Talitha. She's still working. All right, cool. Any questions, thoughts? Looks good. Johnny got a lot off of there.
He's doing a good job. It's not an easy job getting this started and developing these baselines. He's getting there. He's getting there.
It's a lot. It's
And I will say most people are pretty good to work with. Now, sometimes it requires a little negotiating and compromise and
we have some
Yeah.
eccentric people in town.
compromise and, but it's good. I'll give it a B
Good.
as far as the process. Yeah, we're getting there.
At least it ain't a D.
You got it.
The B's good. B's good. I don't mean to denigrate it.
Mhm.
Any other, how about we're going on to commissioners' comments?
Commissioner Smith?
I knew he was gonna do that. The training was pretty good, nice clarity, different things like that kept me going. Now that we're done with training, I see our plan forward. Hopefully all this wonderful stuff that is being hatched comes to fruition in the next month or so. Glad to see some buildings going down, some things happening, lots of activity in town. Maybe too much, maybe not enough, but it's going to keep increasing, I think. And a lot of that new housing isn't online yet, is it? So hopefully that'll make a difference. And it looks like the price of fuel, ouch, is coming to bite us real quick here. I wonder how we can plan for that. Ha-ha. Thanks.
Commissioner Ford?
Lee, I'm really excited to hear about the standard operating procedures, especially for things like variances and building permits, because it has been over the last 10 years all over the place. You get a different story every time you'd walk into City Hall. So having something concrete that's very clear is going to be really helpful, I think, and keeping people who are trying to build more inclined to move forward legitimately, as opposed to just do it and then figure it out, because can't anybody tell me what's going on down there anyway, you know?
Less
Because that's
anxiety.
kind of what was happening. So a lot of that was probably, so I'm really, really happy to hear that's kind of fruition. I'm going to say it again. We need signs on Stedman. We don't have any signs on Stedman. We're getting this nice new street. I hope to
Put light
the
posts.
powers that be that we have signage planned for this improvement. Nome Discovery Tours has put up little signs all over town. They're so helpful and so nice. They're not permanent though, you know, but it's really difficult for people to get around town. When
Wayfinder kind of things.
Yeah.
even a street sign, if you
But we're doing an inventory right now of street signs
horrible,
for that and wayfinding.
Wayfind both
Yeah.
would be great.
both would be great. I would be happy with street
That's
signs.
this big,
Mhm.
I can't read it until I walk
I
up. But yeah, thank you for that. That's,
It'll help the new cab company too.
We've got these, we've got a lot of things happening in town. We've got these fabulous apartment buildings that are going to be coming online
Real
soon.
quick.
We've got so many jobs at the hospital that building's going to fill up with people. We have 3 auto repair stores in town. 2 of them are for sale. If they get sold to places that are you just use them for their own private equipment,
We're
like
in
Matt
trouble.
Johnson's
We're in
store,
trouble.
we are really going to be hurting, because all those people up there are going to have snow machines, 4-wheelers, cars.
Yes, you're absolutely
So
right.
if we as a community don't figure out a way to really promote people to come cut hair, restaurants, just your basic businesses, we're focusing a lot on residential, and we're getting these residentials.
you have to have the
Coming.
amenities.
we
You
gotta
have to have it.
the infrastructure.
Have to have it. I mean,
Yeah,
you'll
amenities.
make an appointment to get your car fixed with the 3, and you'll wait 2 weeks, a month before you can get your car in. Imagine if Farley's gets sold to Bering Straits, and all they do is Bering Strait vehicles. We're going to be in a world of hurt, the rest of the community. So I really hope that
It's happened before.
some thought is put into how can we promote that kind of development. Kudos on getting the taco shop in the bowling alley. I love that.
That's awesome.
Well, I will tell you, we look at that like a business incubator.
Yes.
You go in for so long, you grow your finance, your history, and your base, and then you move out on your own.
Love it.
So
Love it.
That's how I based it, and
Perfect.
it's working.
Love it. I love it. I also appreciate the training. I'm kind of disappointed that everybody didn't get to participate, and I really hope that they'll look at some of what we've done, go back and review the videos, because this is my second, maybe third go around on these things.
I can't count.
And I always get something from it, so it is very useful. So I really enjoy seeing the building updates from Johnny. I think he is doing a really good job, and he's, I know I've contacted him with a few complaints, and he's been Johnny on the spot with it. Pardon the pun. Pardon the pun. So, and I forgive him for not coming tonight, because I know his restaurant, him and his wife's restaurant,
They gotta do it, yes.
just opened up
In
for.
the middle of moving, and
Yeah.
a lot of stuff.
Yeah, excuse.
There's a lot going on.
Yeah.
So, the last thing, and then I'll shut up and we can go home. Oh, wait, we still have some other people.
Yeah, don't worry.
But
take your time.
usually by this time of the year, we are working on the abatement list. And we
Very
not.
good point.
And I think we've got a lot of property in town that really needs to be addressed. So it would be, I think, a good time to start.
With an abatement was for
Thinking about that.
gentle public pressure.
Yep. I mean, even if we only knock down 2 of the buildings, 2 or 3, which is all we usually get each year, that's an improvement. So
Especially at 1/3 of the,
you've got this thing
Housing
across
vacant.
the street where the people, the police, I watched one of the officers pulling out bedding where they're living underneath the Anvil, the liquor store, the old, not liquor store, but Anchor Tavern.
Anchor Tavern,
They're crawling underneath it and living underneath the building.
that old skinny place?
So there's that's a serious hazard. And if that catches on fire and then Mariskayas burns and then Breakers burns, then we've just lost 3 viable businesses. So, we should
And
probably see something
some of
about.
the buildings aren't so structurally sound.
We also are securing those facilities. And I appreciate MPD. They really
Ugh.
kicked this off.
Yes.
A couple of really good officers. We had great officers.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Really jumped out there. But we have notified and are working with a couple of the property owners to put the fencing back up to secure.
Right, they used to be back there, yes.
Yes. So we're doing that, and people are being pretty cooperative, and I understand, but it's got to be secured. And if somebody falls, and there are 15-foot holes.
Yeah,
Where
there's
people go
basements
down.
underneath some of these.
and latrines. It's a public safety, property safety issue, and a health hazard.
Absolutely.
All wrapped in,
And it has to be secured.
So that abatement list does have to be what's done with the police. It's done with the building inspector and it's done with the planning commission. So
right, we used to drive around and take a look at them to
Yes.
verify them.
hope we're gonna put that together.
That would be very nice.
And
I don't know.
I took care of 3 of them this year, so
Hey,
it's everybody else's turn. All right. That's all I got.
Congratulations, 3 of them. That's pretty good.
Commissioner Jennings?
All right, you guys hear me?
Yep.
Excellent. Thank you guys very much. Really appreciated the training. I think we agreed to tie a bunch of things together and it was nice to hear some very tangible examples of kind of what we're seeing and what we're dealing with. Looking forward to continuing on and getting things done before summer turns to fall time right in front of our eyes. Sorry I couldn't be in tonight. Mrs. is out doing some red fishing and it's her first trip without the kids, so I'm excited for her, but I've been I've been listening intently. It's been pretty nice. Thank you guys again, and yeah, I look forward to the next opportunity to get together and learn more about some of this abatement process and some of the other things that we're going to be doing.
Gotta get that on the agenda, abatement process instead of historic preservation. We've got to get rid of them. No. That's it. Next meeting date? Everybody good with the first Tuesday of August, which is what, 4th?
Maybe.
I don't rock him too hard. He's not buckled in.
Nope, thank you.
Thanks, Lee. That's the first. That is the first, right?
What?
The first Tuesday?
Yep, it's the 4th.
4th.
Oh, I'm in September. Sorry.
Yeah,
Okay, yes, I will be here.
I'll be here too. 7 PM regular time unless we hear something.
4th. It is done.
Oh, I was not muted that whole time. I was going to unmute. I also
That's
should
all
be
right.
here that week. Sorry, guys.
That's okay.
Motion to adjourn.
Second,
Seconded.
thirded. We're all adjourned. Thanks.